Welcome back, everybody. We are going through all of the best black cards from the upcoming Magic the Gathering set Foundations, which releases on November 15th, 2024. This set aims to be standard legal for about 5 years, and so much of the balancing is focused around standard, but we're going to take a look at this from the Commander format's perspective and see which cards will move the needle in Commander. My name is Nathan. You're watching the Salty Productions YouTube channel. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like on it and subscribe, and also I will be making videos of all of the other colors, so you can check those out in the links below. I already did the white and blue one, and we just need to record the red, green, and multicolored videos. So anyway, stay tuned for those. Without further ado, we can jump right into it with Arbiter of Woe, 6 mana 5/4 creature demon. As additional cost to cast a spell, sack a creature. It has flying. When the creature enters, each opponent discards a card and loses 2 life. You draw a card and gain 2 life. So nice bit of card advantage there. We've seen this before with Duskmangler in particular. I run this in my Arami of the Gravetide deck because you can bypass the cost to cast the spell by just having it enter the battlefield immediately. This is going to be a great reanimation target, I think, in Standard, but in Commander, you're going to want to have to do something broken with it by creating 3 copies of it, for example, with an Arami. There's also Gourmand, 6 mana 5/5, same cost. You have to sack a creature, flying trample. When you ETBs, each opponent sacks a creature. So card advantage, but just for creatures there. So Arbiter of Woe, I think, once again, will probably go in Arami decks and maybe Demon decks. It is a little expensive at 6 mana. There's a lot of competition in the 6 mana slot for Demons in particular, just because there's been a lot of very busted Demons printed throughout the years that tend to be just high cost. So I think you want to be reanimating this to have it enter your Commander deck. And up next, we have High Society Hunter, 5 mana 5/3 Vampire Noble with flying. Whenever this creature attacks, you may sack another creature. If you do, put a 1/1 counter on this creature. Whenever another non-token creature dies, draw a card, which we've seen with Harvester of Souls, which is showing its age in a 2024 Commander. I must say, I hardly ever see Harvester of Souls nowadays, but also Morbid Opportunist, we've seen before, just be a great card draw engine, even if you're not intentionally sacrificing things. It's just creatures tend to die in the blocking portion of the combat phase, and I think High Society Hunter will just be a great draw engine in either Aristocrats decks or Vampire decks. It is a little expensive as 5 mana. It is a setup piece, and honestly, you need to rely on your opponents to do stuff to get it to trigger if you are not proactively sacrificing things, but it does grow itself, so that is nice. And if you care about sacrificing your creatures, like you want them to hit the bin, then you can certainly do that with like a Junji or something like that. But I think you really probably play this for the Vampire creature type. Otherwise, you're probably already playing Harvester of Souls or Morbid Opportunist. So like I said, this would go straight into Vampire decks. Edgar Markov, of course, being the most popular of those, and Alenda, because oftentimes you want Alenda to be sacrificed somehow, and she does care about vampires as well. Moving on here, we have Bloodthirsty Conqueror, 5 mana 5/5 Vampire Knight with flying and death touch. Whenever an opponent loses life, you gain that much life, which is the exact text on Exquisite Blood. So this card has been expensive for a while now, and it's nice to see a second functional reprint of it. And it's crazy that they introduced this into Standard for 5 years. I think we're going to see a lot of this guy in our Standard games. However, in Commander, he's just as good because he combos with the various Veto Thorn of the Duskgrowth type of effects, your Sanguine Bond type of effects for basically infinite damage, as long as you can then deal 1 damage or gain 1 life. And of course, it comes with flying and death touch, because what this card doesn't say, although what it functionally does, is it says, and now your opponents tried to kill you. So you're going to need that flying death touch body, because essentially any time that they would deal damage, you would gain that much life. So it incentivizes them to deal with you first, to eliminate you as the threat. Otherwise, you just gain all of the damage that they will be dealing. So Bloodthirsty Conqueror, definitely a cool card, and I think it's going to be a slam dunk into Vampire and Knights decks, or just general life gain decks. Combo, Console of Allocation, and Liesa Shroud of Dusk are pretty popular sort of life pingy type of decks. But if you are playing the Sidar Jabari Knight Tribal Commander, that's going to be great there, or your Edgar Markov style of decks as well. Next, we have Blasphemous Edict, 5 mana sorcery, but we can only pay black if there are 13 or more creatures on the battlefield. Each player sacrifices 13 creatures of their choice, which is essentially combining by invitation only with a Blasphemous Act. I think that this is going to cost 1 mana probably around 40 to 50% of the time, and I'm guessing you'll cast this for 5 mana about half of the time as well. So we have to examine the card from both cost modes. I think 5 mana is actually an okay board wipe because it gets around indestructible. So you get the ability to dodge indestructible for an extra mana. So if we consider that we're paying 1 extra mana above something like a damnation to get around indestructible, that's a cost I'm willing to pay. And of course, if we pay this for 1 black, it's absolutely crazy because then we have just basically set our opponent's boards back to the Stone Age and generated a bunch of card advantage for ourselves. And if you care about things being sacrificed, if you happen to be a Turgid deck, my gosh, this card is an amazing 2-card combo with Turgid. Absolutely ridiculous. And then, all right, we have Revenge of the Rats, 4 mana sorcery, create a tapped 1/1 black rat creature token for each creature card in your graveyard. And the key here is it has flashback for 2 and 2 black, so 4 mana total. So the reason why is it needs to have that flashback in order to be worth it. We've seen this before with spider spawning in particular, which we don't see run in many games. That says create a 1/2 spider creature token with reach for each creature card in your graveyard, and also has flashback. Now, it's Revenge of the Rats, I think, is better than Spider Spawning, but less good than Kessig Cagebreakers, which gives you the 2/2 tokens tapped and attacking. So I just like this more because if you're in a self-mill deck and you're looking for things to sacrifice in mass, and you're doing both of those at the same time, then this could be a consideration for your deck. So you'd have to be either particularly Rat Tribal or an Aristocrat style or self-mill style of decks. Maybe Raffine would want this. I'm not quite sure on that, but definitely an Ashcoat of the Shadow Swarm. I think that this card is basically built for an Ashcoat style of deck. And moving on here, we have Zul Ashur, Lich Lord. 2 mana 2/2, Zombie Warlock, Ward, pay 2 life. Basically nothing. Tap, you may cast target zombie creature card from your graveyard this turn. Guess what we will like to do in zombie decks? Sacrifice things and put them in the graveyard. And so this basically reads tap, draw a card every single turn. An absolutely amazing card. So this is the first time we've seen this, I think, for zombies. We've seen it for Hakan for particularly night spells, and also Jacob Fry for assassins. But this is a welcome addition to all zombie decks worldwide, such as your Will Helt decks or your Verena decks. It's just going to be an insta-slam into all of your zombie tribal decks. And moving on here, we have Vampire Gourmand, 2 mana 2/2 Vampire. Whenever this creature attacks, you may sacrifice another creature. If you do, draw a card, and this creature can't be blocked this turn. And I love the flavor text here. He asked me if I wanted to come in for a bite to eat. Who am I to turn down a stranger's kindness? As he just like lays there, draining his life out on the stoop. So as for how Vampire Gourmand functions, I think this has to go specifically in an Edgar Markov style of deck because every card you cast, every vampire you cast, comes with that sack fodder token. So specifically, it's not as good as like a Braids or an Ayara, which both ask you to sacrifice creatures to draw cards. But the fact that Vampire Gourmand can be then unblockable, assuming that we do sack the creature, means that we can use it over and over in combat. And so it's very consistent draw engine. So I think this will immediately go in your Edgar Markov decks specifically, and really beyond that, I'm not sure that I would consider it. Then we have our honorable mentions category, so cards that are worth mentioning but didn't quite move the needle in Commander. First, we have Midnight Snack, 3 mana enchantment with Raid at the beginning of end step. If you attack this turn, create a food token, and you can pay 3 and sack it. Target opponent loses X life, where X is the amount of life you gain this turn. Great in your Sam and Frodo type of food decks specifically, but I actually just wanted to mention this because my goodness, if you combo this with a Grey Merchant of Asphodel, which probably is going to be run in those types of decks anyway, you can deal some insane damage with Midnight Snack while getting lots of value by creating food tokens off of it, which is pretty cool. Then we have Abyssal Harvester, 3 mana 3/2 Demon Warlock. Tap, exile target creature card from a graveyard that was put there this turn. Create a token that's a copy of it, except it's a nightmare in addition to its other types, and exile all other nightmare tokens you control. So I look at this as you can tap to essentially have a repeatable animate dead every turn if you want to continuously be getting the ETBs from the creatures that you reanimate. So it's a good card draw engine, and potentially could see this in your demon tribal decks, like a Be'lakor if you're running like a reanimation strategy where you want to be reanimating big expensive demons out of your graveyard, which I think is a perfectly legitimate strategy, by the way. Demons are super good. Abyssal Harvester is going to be a good setup piece if you're not hitting your other reanimation style of effects, and it is a non-token demon, so it gets reduced by things like Herald's Horn and so forth. So that's Abyssal Harvester. I think a contender for a setup slot in your Demon Tribal decks. Next, we have Vengeful Bloodwitch, 2 mana, 1/1, Vampire Warlock. Whenever this creature or another creature you control dies, target opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So this is like a baby Blood Artist because it only cares about creatures you controlling die, while Blood Artist cares about any creature dies in order to get the equivalent target opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1. We also have our Zulaport Cutthroats, which I think are better than in Commander, but if you're digging for your 4th or 5th version of this effect, you can reach for Vengeful Bloodwitch. And then we have 9 Lives Familiar, the art we've been looking at this whole time. 3 mana, 1/1 cat. This creature enters with 8 revival counters on it. If you cast it whenever this creature dies, if it had a revival counter on it, return it to the battlefield with 1 fewer revival counters on it at the beginning of the next end step. This is not quite as good as a Bloodghast, so it's not quite the best contender for that repeatable reanimation style of creature. You're like reassembling skeletons might be another one that you might consider in this slot, but I do like the fact that you can pay the 3 up front and then it will just consistently reanimate itself without asking for anything beyond that, and so it's a nice repeatable reanimation target. And I believe that brings us to the end of our black video, so we will look at the top 3 black cards out of the entire Foundation set, and that would be, drum roll please, Bloodthirsty Conqueror, Blasphemous Edict, and High Society Hunter. Bloodthirsty Conqueror, absolutely ridiculous. We're going to see this all the time in decks that want to combo off with life gain. It's just an instant include, and the 5/5 Flying Death Touch body is something formidable. This is going to be one of the most expensive cards from the set, I believe. Blasphemous Edict is going to be one of the best board wipes that we've seen in black in a while, possibly a contender for the top 2 or top 3 slot within best black board wipes. And High Society Hunter, I think, is just going to be a great card draw engine. We're going to see a lot. If you care about the vampire creature type, you'll probably run this over a Morbid Opportunist. So that is the video, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Once again, I've made other videos covering different colors within Foundations, so I'll have those linked down in the description below. You can check out the ones that I've made. I just got to make the red one and the green one still, and then we'll be set for the Foundations set review. So once again, my name is Nathan. You've been watching Salty Productions, and hopefully we'll see you all in the next one.